I would like to talk about why the lean startup changes everything, because it actually does change everything if you really think about it. Before we can get into that, let's address the elephant in the room, which is my appearance. This is not me. I'm not bald, I don't have a beard, and I never wear hats. But here's what's happening. We had our company offsite last week with all the employees. Everyone was asked to come up with a fun alter ego. Mine was a superhero alter ego. So this is what I came up with. I decided to call him Captain Pivot. Let's talk about why the lean startup changes everything. Now, before I started reading the lean startup, I thought that all businesses were built the same way. You identify a great idea and then you build it out. You build out this amazing product or service and then you bring it to market and customers will line up to buy it. That was the theory. That was how I thought things worked. And for the most part, that's how a lot of companies operate, but there are some pretty glaring problems with this approach. So one of those problems is that when you go through and build out something based on your idea, whatever that idea is, let's just say a smartphone, for example. When you're building out that smartphone, you might be spending a couple years, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years developing this amazing smartphone, bringing it to market, building all of these features. But by the time you bring it to market, the market has changed. So maybe there's already another competitor who's brought their smartphone to market. Maybe people no longer want smartphones. Maybe the market has moved on to something else entirely. So all of that development time that you spent, all of that money that you spent building out this thing, that's all wasted. If you look at some of the biggest companies in the world today, Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they have all done this at one point or another. They've released products to the market that were ahead of their time or that the market just wasn't ready for yet. And these companies ended up losing billions of dollars in the process. The second problem with this traditional approach is that it's very difficult to know if you're even building the right thing. If you think back to when you were in school and you remember sitting in class and listening to your teachers, how many of those classes did you find yourself falling asleep in? For me, I would say probably half of them. Half of those classes I could barely pay attention. My mind was elsewhere. I was dreaming of other things that I wanted to be doing. How much of the work that you do falls into that same category? How much of the work that you do is just busy work that doesn't really matter? How much of the work that you do is building the wrong thing? Turns out it's a huge amount. When you're trying to build a business, it's very hard to know if you're rebuilding the right thing because nobody is going to use your product until it is done. So you're never able to test your ideas. By the time you have an actual product to show people, it's too late. They're sleeping by the time you're building it. So how do you know if you're building the right thing? It turns out there's a better way. And so this is where the lean startup comes in. Eric Ries wrote this book in 2011. It's almost 10 years old now, but the concepts in this book are timeless and they're still super relevant today. In the lean startup, Eric Ries introduces a concept called the build, measure, learn loop. And this loop is at the core of what makes the lean startup different. The way that this works is that instead of building something all the way out and then testing it, you should build a minimum viable version of your idea and then measure how people react to it. Measure how many people sign up, measure how many people use it, measure how many people pay for it, measure how many people churn. And then based on that feedback that you get from the market, you learn from it and you pivot and then you start the process over again. So you build a minimum viable version of your idea, you measure how people react to it, you learn from that feedback, you pivot, and then you build again, and you measure again, and you learn again, and you pivot again. It's this continuous feedback loop between the market and your product that allows you to constantly be learning and iterating. One of the key concepts in the lean startup is that of a minimum viable product. A minimum viable product is the smallest possible version of your product that you could build that would allow you to learn something, that would allow you to gain some sort of customer feedback. Here's a good example. Let's take Uber, for example. What is the minimum viable product for Uber? Well, it's not the entire Uber platform. There's a lot of parts to the Uber platform. There's the driver-facing app. There's the rider-facing app. There's the whole back-end infrastructure. None of that is the MVP. Something much smaller than that is the MVP. So maybe the MVP is just a website where people can request rides. That's it. It is a simple website where people can go in and they can type in where they want to go. And then they hit a button that says get picked up, and someone manually picks them up and drives them to where they want to go. It's not an app. There's no algorithms. There's no surge pricing. There's no driver-facing app. There's nothing like that. It's just a website. In order to launch that MVP, you wouldn't need hundreds of engineers. You wouldn't need millions of dollars in funding. All you would need is a couple people and a couple $1,000s, and you could launch that MVP. You could put it online, and then you could start measuring. Then you could start seeing how many people use it. Are people actually using it? Do they find value out of it? And then based on that feedback, you can start to make decisions about what to build next. One of the interesting things about this Uber example is that this actually did happen. This is exactly how Uber started. The founders of Uber didn't just set out to build the entire Uber platform. They started with something much smaller, a simple website that allowed people to request rides, and then they grew from there based on user feedback. Let's look at another example. Let's look at Dropbox. What is the minimum viable product for Dropbox? Well, it's not the entire Dropbox platform. There's a lot to the Dropbox platform. There's the client software that you install on your computer. There's the web interface. There's the whole back-end infrastructure. All of that is not the MVP. Something much smaller than that is the MVP. Maybe the MVP is just a demo video and a waiting list. That's it. Just a video that shows how Dropbox would work if it existed, and a waiting list where people can sign up and indicate interest. In this case, the demo video was enough to get 75,000 people to sign up to the waiting list. That's it. They didn't need any funding. They didn't need any engineers. They didn't need anything like that. All they needed was a video and a waiting list, and they were able to validate their idea and prove that there was demand for it. So this is the power of the minimum viable product. You don't have to build the entire thing. You don't have to spend millions of dollars. You don't have to assemble a huge team. All you have to do is build something small, something simple, and then measure and learn from that feedback, and then build again, and measure again, and learn again, and pivot again. And it's this continuous feedback loop between the market and your product that allows you to constantly be learning and iterating. One of the things that I really like about this book is that it doesn't just tell you how to build a startup. It also tells you how to think about problems. It gives you this framework for how to approach uncertainty. When you're trying to solve a problem, it's very easy to get lost in the details. It's very easy to start building a bunch of features and to start adding complexity. But the Lean Startup teaches you to step back and to zoom out and to look at the problem from a higher level. It teaches you to break down the problem into smaller pieces and to tackle those smaller pieces one at a time. It's one of those books that once you read it, you can't unread it. It's one of those books that once you apply the concepts from the book, you can't unlearn them. And that's why I say that the Lean Startup changes everything. If you liked this video, you should check out another video that I did on the Lean Startup. It's my notes from the book. It covers all of the main points from the book in a little more detail. It goes into a little bit more depth. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care.